Hi guys, in this video I will talk about my Stratocaster and give some pointers about making your strat-style guitar stay in tune. Just like most guitars, the design is never perfect. There are problematic spots on the instrument, and on the Stratocaster it's the nut and the saddles. Why those are problematic is, again, strings have these little grooves in them, little windings, and they get stuck on the nut. For example, you do a big bend and it lowers the pitch, and then you like, shit, my guitar is out of tune, and then you check with the tuner and you bring it back, and then you do something and it goes sharp because it's never really floating without friction. It can get stuck here. And similarly here on the saddle side of things, even though the piece of string is very small, very short, if you do a bend or use the whammy, the string can get stuck. And that is the most frustrating thing about electric guitars, is making them stay in tune. So I will explain what I've done to my guitar. These are aftermarket saddles by Tech. They're called String Savers. They're made out of solid Teflon, and Teflon is obviously known for its non-stick properties. So this helps minimize the friction in some ways. They don't really alter the sound in my experience, but I had these crappy Mexican bent steel saddles, and they were just really low quality. What was really frustrating for me is that the height adjustment screws kept lowering by themselves, and I always had to take bring it back in tune and realize one side is lower than the other. That was the main reason I got replacement saddles, and these had really good reviews for preventing string breakages. In my experience, it does not really help with that, but it's good quality saddles, and they do change the sound somewhat. I think they make it more brittle sounding, more Stratty or Telecaster sounding, but it's just so insignificant that you guys can ignore the differences. And that's pretty much it. The nut is just your regular nut. I got bored and I colored it with a marker, so it looks different. Another modification I made to this guitar is this shortened David Gilmour whammy arm. I just, again, Mexican guitars are great with some upgrades. You can literally take a Mexican guitar, has great American-made pickups, but just the saddles are garbage. The whammy arm is garbage. It was so low quality that after using it, I realized that it was bending. It actually got bent. This thing, I got it on eBay. Just search for David Gilmour shortened arm, and you can buy this whammy arm for different styles of different types of Stratocasters. American ones, Asian ones, Mexican ones, because they all have different diameters. In the end, it is great. I had it for several years, still rocking. Another thing that I do to I did to the Stratocaster, after reading on some forums where the tech for Stevie Ray Vaughan came up with this trick, is to put a piece of cotton in there, and that solves the wobble. There's, if you guys know, there's a spring that is supposed to be in there, inside the whammy arm cavity, to kind of provide tension, but a little piece of cotton is the much better option. It stays in there, the arm feels solid, it doesn't wobble, and then once it becomes unstable, you take a little bit more and just unscrew the arm, put it back in there, screw it back in. Okay. these are the only upgrades that I've made. So my secret to staying in tune, number one, the most important thing in my experience is putting on the strings correctly. If you don't have locking tuners, you need to minimize the windings around the tuning peg, because if you have a big mess, if they're not coiled correctly, then you use the whammy arm, and those windings loosen up and they get caught on themselves, and it becomes sharp, and then over time it loosens again, and your tuning goes flat. So it's very important to have a very kind of neat way of putting your strings on. And what I do is I do two loops around the tuning peg, just over and then under. So you just insert the string, keep turning it so that the little tip is under your string, and then it's over that string. So essentially there are two loops and the tip of the string is between them. It keeps lock it in place, and no more than two. Otherwise, like I mentioned, you're going to have tuning instabilities. If you have locking tuners, then you don't need those loops around the tuner, the tuning peg. You just insert the string, pull on it, clamp it with a wheel. Most locking tuners have a wheel. Clamp it and then tune it, and it's half a turn in your desired pitch. So that solves that problem. Anyway, if you don't have locking tuners, make it very neat and make sure that it's not a mess here. That's the number one problem. Number two is your nut. Your nut, if it's a new guitar, it takes some time for the strings to kind of file in the grooves correctly. If it's not filed, if it's not set up correctly at the factory, and your string is going to get caught on those little pieces that are left there. What I find is the best product is called nut sauce. It's some kind of graphite Vaseline mix in the syringe, and when you change the strings, maybe every other string change, just apply a tiny little dab here, and it just prevents your tuning instability completely. And also they claim that it helps with the string breakage, which I find to be absolutely true. So when you change the strings, put some here, put some there on your saddles, and you're good. For my setup, I have non-floating tremolo. It's flush. It's almost exactly flush to the body. So see, it's maybe a little bit, but mostly it's flush to the body. That, in my opinion, helps with your bends. When you're bending a note, the other strings don't loosen. And then for me, I tighten the springs. If you take off the cover, mine has 3 springs, and you can take a screwdriver and screw in these screws, and that will increase the tension on the springs, and what that will do is the springs will pull on this tremolo block, and as a result your arm is going to be raised like this. On my guitar, the tension is very high. For me, I for some reason it helps with the tuning stability. Okay, and another thing is there's some voodoo magic people do. They arrange their springs in weird fashions. I don't know, maybe it was luck, but for me, I tightened this side slightly more than this one. Why? Because, I don't know. I just tried it and it worked. Okay, let me show finally how it stays in tune. Once you put on your strings, you gotta make sure they're stretched out, and because first of all, strings do need to be stretched out, and if you have any windings, they need to be really, really tight. Once that is done, you are in tune. Now, dive bomb. like an obscene bend, right? Pretty good. Another trick is using the whammy arm actually helps bring your guitar in tune. If you do an extreme bend like I just did, like way bent way up. It's not perfect, but that's my advice. If you do some crazy, man, it will take your string some time to return back to pitch. But other than that, it's, for me, it's pretty solid in terms of tuning stability. I'm pretty happy. That's it.